Assalamualaikum and greetings. Welcome to FSPPP Discussion Podcast, where we discuss issues related to public policy, public finance, and administration. My name is Siti Shafi'ah.
And I'm Shara. For this episode, Shah, we'll be discussing an issue that actually very close to the daily life in Malaysians, government subsidized.
If we refer, Shara, to a Bernama report dated 20 December, our PMX, Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, stated that the government has successfully reduced subsidy spending by about 800 million since the implementation of the targeted fuel subsidy under Budi Madani RON 95.
So 800 million is a very large amount, Shafia. From a public finance perspective, it really makes us pause and think. Those targeted subsidy truly have a low income groups and vulnerable community, or could it eventually become a financial burden on the government, especially as the cost of a living continue to rise?
And it is from very question that today's discussion topic comes in: efficiency of government expenditure, targeted subsidy, help for the needy, or financial drain.
Before we go any further, maybe we should first take a step back and understand what the subsidy actually means in government policy.
In simple terms, a subsidy is financial support provided by the government to help reduce the cost of living, where this support can come in form of lower prices of certain goods or through direct financial assistance.
So in this podcast, we will look at the background of a Malaysian subsidy policy, discuss the issues through expert opinion and the challenges in implementing targeted subsidy, and evaluate whether this approach is truly the best solution term of a government expenditure efficiency.
Okay, Shara, before we get into the main issues, maybe we should take a step back first. Why did the targeted subsidies become such a big topic in Malaysia?
Yeah, sure. That's a good place to start. For a long time, Malaysia relied on what we call a blanket subsidy system. Things like a fuel, cooking oil, and basic food item were subsidy for everyone, regardless of an income level. And at that time, it actually made sense. The goal was to keep price stable, control inflations, and protect household purchasing power, especially during uncertain economic periods. But over the time, we started to see the downside as a global community. Prices fluctuated, subsidy costs keep increasing, especially fuel subsidy.
Exactly. By 2022, government spending on subsidies had gone beyond RM 77.3 billion, which was one of the highest amount in Malaysia's history. And the bigger issue was how those subsidies were distributed. Studies and government reports showed that the blanket subsidy were regressive. High-income household and even foreign national ended up benefiting more. So, mainly this is because they consume more fuel and subsidized goods in the first place. According to the MOF itself, this led to significant leakage and weakened the original purpose of subsidies, which was to help those who needed support the most.
So it also means the government had less room to spend on the important area like healthcare, education, and long-term economic development. So because of all this, the government began shifting away from a blanket subsidy toward a more targeted approach. So yes, that where a program like a Budi Madani for fuel subsidy come in, along with the strengthened cash assistance scheme such as SDR and SARA. And we can see that shift clearly in numbers. Allocation for STR and SARA increased from 10 billion to 13 billion. And the Budi Madani RON 95 program involved around 16.5 million, Malaysia and subsidy recipients.
So based on the budget 2025 speech by the MOF, the government currently allocates around 60 to 65 billion a year for subsidies and social assistance. So overall, the targeted subsidies really mark a turning point in Malaysia's fiscal policy, trying to balance fairness, efficiency, and long-term sustainability.
So when we talk about targeted subsidy as policy reform, the intention is clearly about, but is the real question is how far this is actually help those in needs without creating a new pressure on government finance.
Exactly. On paper, targeted subsidies are often seen as more efficient, but once we look at implementation, we realize it is not as simple as it sounds. One of the biggest challenges is accuracy. Targeted subsidies depends heavily on data. Who is eligible, who is not, and how up to date that information really is. And this is where the problems usually start. When the data doesn't reflect current realities, some people who should be eligible ended up being left out.
So, when we have seen this concern clearly in the context of a Budi Madani Law 95, especially when the public started questioning whether the 300 liter monthly limit is enough. So, especially for the people who work far from home and really heavily on their vehicle, for them, the policy can feel quite restrictive. Public acceptance is another major issue. And it is because the public policy are not judged only by who much money the government save, but also whether people feel the policy is fair. At the same time, the government has to make sure targeted subsidy don't become a fiscal burden again. Even though our PMX started the around approach 800 million is saving has been achieved since the implementation of a Budi 95, this figure needs to be viewed from a long-term perspective.
Yes, Shara, if targeted subsidies are expanded without paper control or if eligibility criteria become too loose, government spending could easily arise again. But on the other hand, if the criteria are too strict, cost of living pressures may be pushed directly into the household. So the real challenge isn't about whether the subsidies should exist or not. It is about how the policy is designed by making sure it genuinely helps those in need while still maintaining fiscal discipline. That is exactly what makes targeted subsidies such a complex policy issue because every decision affects does not not only the government finances but also daily lives of the people.
So, to understand this issue more clearly, Shah, we really need to look at it from the perspective of those who are directly involved in policy planning and implementation. So, in this segment, we will hearing expert opinion from Mr. Norisham bin Shafi'i, Director of the National Property Information Center under the Ministry of Finance Malaysia, as well as Mr. Desmond Wong, Assistant Secretary at the Minister of Finance Malaysia.
The most critical element is to ensure that the beneficiary data is really accurate. So the entire policy we will 100% succeed and it will not defeat the objective of the policy. Among the biggest challenge faced by the data manager or the data repository system, it is same as what experienced in mapping, multi-agency integration. Currently, all the data are in silo. Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara holds their own data. We known as the MyCard data. Jabatan Pengangkutan Jalan, they have the license data. SOCSO, they have the employment data. MyKasih, we have the poverty data. And also the immigration data, either they are the citizens or non-citizens. So the inconsistency of this data set, if not managed well, it can create error. So the non-eligible citizen will get the subsidy or vice versa. The other challenges, million of daily transaction recorded. So we need a proper analysis. We need an analytics or of the refueling pattern. This is to detect the anomalies, which, for example, in rural area, we detect a lot of transaction compared to the urban area. So with this analytics, with this technology of detecting the anomalies, we need to really know which area is the pattern is not being misused by the citizen. And also the integrity issue in the petrol station, because sometimes the technology can be a technical issue. So sometimes the my card cannot be detected. So they need to override manually. So the manual override is not traceable. And last but not least, the digital literacy, especially amongst our older citizens and also peoples in rural area where they are not really get used into this technology using the system where they need to key in to put in to slot in their my card and so on. Under previous system, the blanket subsidy system, which is enjoyed by all, the leakage I think was very significant. A large portion of subsidized petrol enjoyed by all, not only the citizen, the foreigners also enjoy the petrol, especially within the border area, bought by non-eligible group in rural petrol station. And compared to the previous, I think Budi 95 looks successfully close many of these issue, many of these leakage issue. But of course, none of the system in the world cannot close all the loopholes. Especially now we are dealing with the identity issue, multiple agency data, where you only have, for example, you have 300 liter of petrol, but you only have motorcycle. But how can every month your subsidy for of 300 liter finish? So where does the petrol go? Maybe they lend their card or they share their my card in compensation of the cash. So and also we're still depending on the existing technology. So before, of course, when we want to embark in any new policy, we need to enhance the technology. So maybe a few of these station still use the old previous technology, the old fuel pump, which aging equipments may lead to longer downtime and also leads to manual override, which is untraceable. And however, for me, even though there are a few leakage, as what I stated earlier, is it do not indicate a total failure of this new policy. The new system have overcome a lot of leakage issue. This is normal in any new policy introduced by the currently as a director of NAPIC. I'm a policymaker, one of the policymaker for NAPIC, which we deal with million of data every day, million of data where we think that the most effective way to handle this kind of policy to have a fully integrated system, which we compile all the data in one repository. So which is currently all the agencies work in silo. So if we can have a fully integrated system which combine all this data, so we can improve the accuracy and we can really see the effectiveness of this policy. As long as the data still exists in silo, I think we still have an error and we still have an accuracy issue of the data. The other thing is, I think after many months of this Budi 95 implementation, this is the right time we have an audit mechanism to see the effectiveness of this system. And last but not least, I think we should also embark on this current technology, which is we heard here and there artificial intelligence. So I think artificial intelligence or AI can easily detect anomalies, the refueling pattern in certain area, in certain group, so we can easily trace the uncommon refueling pattern in which area. And also it is good for monitoring and reporting.
First, they must set aside to pay emolument. Another thing is that government have the responsible actually to ensure that the livelihood of the people is in order, and also since our base wages is low, that's why government implement a lot of thing, a lot of plan. All these three plans being launched is so that it can upgrade the livelihood of the people, obtain more higher skill. You train people through progressive wage, higher learning process, so that their wages will go up more, and they can less depend on subsidy. I can see that there is a government in outline the action plan, monitoring process, meaning to say they, beside officer getting update, there should be a maybe quarterly or 6 month. There's a meeting with the ministry with the party involved, implementation progress and so on. And if you found that there is something is not doing well, so you should have this SLU, libat urus, or English say consultation process, so that if they either it is being slowed down by administrative or perhaps due to bureaucratic issues, so at least we can iron it out. How we said, for in the case is like SDR, Budi, and Budi 95, right? All these involve monetary and also quota, like Budi 95. I think it's very important that because SDR and Budi is reported and being monitored by KSN. So there is a KSN KP meeting, KSU KP meeting with KSN chair. This is part of the KPI for them. So usually, I mean, when we report it, usually we see how many has been transferred to the recipient and how fast they are getting it. So we're not doing it manually anymore, as it is online based. So the database can be cross-checked easily. So I think it goes back to your question again. Yes, it is very important, especially when government roll out all this program. Either it's giving cash or giving assistance or giving a quota. In the end, when you roll out the program, you must have verification process. At the same time, you need to monitor it and audit it. So that makes sure the system always, like I say again, it's dynamic. It's not like when we do it will perfect. Of course, there are people will be left out there that need to be identified and to be matched on to the program.
So based on the expert opinion we have just discussed, it's clear that improving targeted subsidy is not about introducing entirely new policy, but about strengthening how existing systems are implemented. Yes, and one of the most important recommendation is highlighted by the expert is data integrations. At the moment, data is held separately across different agencies. So moving towards a fully integrated database where information is combined into a single system would significantly improve accuracy in determining eligibility.
Yes, and another key recommendation is strengthening audit and monitoring mechanism. So the expert pointed out that no system is perfect from the start. Continuous audits allow the government to evaluate effectiveness, identify weaknesses, and make gradual improvements over the time. This is also help reduce manipulation and strengthen the governance because every eligibility decisions become traceable, transparent, and also verifiable.
It's not only that, Shah. I hear the expert mention the potential use of the artificial intelligence to support monitoring efforts. For example, AI can help detect abnormal, unusual, refueling patterns, which allow authority to identify possible misuse for more efficiency. But importantly, to ensure that strong personal data protection measures are in place, especially when dealing with millions of individuals' records.
Yes, exactly. If implemented carefully, these technological and governance improvements can strengthen public trust in targeted subsidy policy. In the long run, this reform can help ensure that targeted subsidies truly functions as support for vulnerable groups rather than becoming another source or inefficiency or fiscal strain. As we come to the end of our discussion, it's clear that targeted subsidies are not just a technical policy choice, but a complex issues that affects public finance, governance, and the daily lives of the Malaysians. So throughout this podcast, we've seen how Malaysia's shift from blanket subsidies to targeted subsidies was driven by fiscal pressures and the need to reduce leakage while ensuring support reaches those who truly need it.
So our discussion also showed that the success of targeted subsidy depends heavily on implementations, especially data accuracy, proper monitoring, and good governance. The expert highlighted that without integrated system and ongoing evolution, targeted subsidies risk not reaching the right people. When policy are designed properly, we can improve government spending efficiency while also supporting public welfare. That's why subsidy policy should continue to be understood and evaluated. Not only that, by policymakers, but also by the public as a taxpayers and beneficiaries.
Exactly, Shara. So the key question remains, are targeted subsidies a genuine form of help, or could they become a financial burden if not managed properly? Thank you for joining us on the FSPTP discussion podcast. We hope this discussion encourage more critical thinking about government spending and subsidy policies in Malaysia. Until we see you again. Bye-bye.